بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على نبينا وحبيبنا وقرة أعيننا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد. The theme, the Quranic theme that I'm going to share with you inshallah ta'ala tonight, that we're going to share the verses from surat Yusuf and surat Rajeh that talk about ethical consistency. And this is an extremely well, let's see if we can go back. Can we go back? There we go. And this is one of the top 10 Quranic themes. It exists within the top 10 list. And every once in a while I'll point out a major theme or a theme that kind of exists in the top 10 group. And this is one of them. The Quran is very, very big on this concept, on the idea of ethical consistency. That because an ethic, it cannot be called an ethic if you're not consistent with it. If it's not consistent, it's a preference. It's just a preference, something you like. So you do when you have time, you do when you're in a good mood, you do when you enjoy it, you do when the circumstances are forgiving or allow for it. That's not an ethic. An ethic or a value or a principle, and all these are words that can be used to a certain degree interchangeably with one another. They kind of, like the difference I'll talk about probably in Tazkiyah sessions and after Fajr. I'm not going to do it here. But they're all quite similar in what they are. Principle, value, ethics, pretty similar. One of the most important attributes or descriptions of an ethic or a principle of value is that they're consistent, that they're always there. Any condition for them takes away the description or the name of ethic, value, or principle. That being understood, any value or ethic or principle will have certain exceptions to their rules. And these exceptions will exist within the definition of what they are. For example, honesty. That's an ethic, right? However, there is within the definition, embedded within it, there are certain exceptions to the rule. So, for example, during war, you don't go and tell your enemy the truth. That's understood, right? You're allowed to compliment someone kindly, something that's not maybe 100% true. Giving a compliment. Oh, it's a nice hair. It isn't. But you just say it anyways because it's something that they just had a haircut. So you're going to say something nice about it, right? Complimenting your spouse, for example. These are things that, fil islah, if you're trying to bring people together, if they fought, and you want to say, well, this person misses you, even though maybe they didn't say that specifically. But they maybe implied it or it's apparent. So you said you're trying to bring people together. So these are exceptions to a rule that is a part of the definition. So it's not like this is not taking away from the consistency of the ethic, because these exceptions are a part of the definition of this ethic to begin with. There's no ethic at all, or value, that comes with zero caveats. Every single ethic, every value, every principle, there has to be an exception to the rule, there has to be a caveat, there has to be a circumstance where you do it a little bit differently. That is the norm, which is why understanding values is complicated. You have to have an in-depth definition. You can't define a value with just one sentence. You have to have something a little bit more robust so that you can add to that definition the caveats and the exceptions so that you have a good understanding of it. Because ethics and values are not designed to make you naive and make you someone who doesn't know how to carry themselves in life and lack wisdom and make mistakes. It's naive to tell your enemy the truth or to sit there and tell the truth openly to everyone, even though they're not asking for it, because you're not supposed to do that. There's your sin. Yes, the fact that you sinned is the truth, but you're not supposed to go and tell people about it. You're supposed to conceal your sin. You keep that between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there's certain understandings you have to have in order for you to be able to practice the ethic appropriately. So that's why any value or principle or ethic has to be really well defined in depth. It has to be a robust definition. But once you have that definition, once it's clear to you what honesty is, what trustworthiness is, what loyalty is, what compassion, empathy, rahmah is, what humbleness is, what these ethics are, then you have to be consistent with them. Then you have to stick to them at all times. If you are generous when you are wealthy, but not when you are poor, then you're not really generous. That's not generosity. Generosity means you are going to give when you are wealthy. You'll give a lot because you have a lot. And it means you will give when you are poor. You'll just give little because you have little. That's all. But you're still going to give. I mean, you're still going to reach in your pocket and offer something. Offer what you have, because that's what it means to be generous. Because if generosity is an ethic, then you're always going to be trying to give people something. If you have no money, you give them your time, you give them your knowledge, you give them your ear sometimes to listen to their problems, you give them your compassion, your emotion, your commitment, your love, whatever it is that you have to offer. And if you have wealth, you offer that as well. If you only do it when it's convenient, then it's not an ethic, it's a preference. And that's nice. That's nice. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, really. But you can't call it an ethic. And the Quran is not interested in your preferences, and it's not offering the reward of Jannah based on your preferences. It's offering it to ethics. People وَيُؤْثِرُونَ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ وَلَوْ كَانَ بِهِمْ خَصَاصَةٌ. People who will behave selflessly even if they are in poverty. Even if they are starving, they will still offer something because they are generous. That's who they are. They're selfless. So they're always going to do that, regardless of whether they're doing well today or they're not doing well. This is a major theme in the Quran. It's all across. And it's something that I think, unfortunately, even though it's a major theme, Muslims don't necessarily fully understand. I think if I put the 10 top themes, Quranic themes, that the majority of people here would say, yeah, we know that one. Yes, knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes, obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All agree to. I don't know how clear this is to the majority of people, even though the Quran continues to teach it almost at every turn. You find verses talking about this topic, that you have to stick to it no matter what. And that actually, it's only really an ethic, I'll end with that and then I'll go through the verses inshallah for you. It's only an ethic if you practice it when it's inconvenient. It's not really an ethic if you don't. Like if you were not put in a position where practicing this ethic or demonstrating this ethic was inconvenient, then you can't call it an ethic yet. You can't call it that. You can't call it a value or a principle yet. It's only when it's inconvenient to practice it that it becomes an ethic, because you have to prove that. Like you have to prove that you will stick to this no matter what. If no matter what has not come yet, meaning so far things are pretty easy, then you can't really establish that you live by this rule, that this is a way of life for you. So for you not to practice the ethic when it's inconvenient means for sure it's not an ethic, because that was the one chance you had to prove that this was a principle and a value. You had the chance and you blew it. You didn't prove it. So you can't call this an ethic anymore. So you have to go back to the drawing board and figure out what your ethic actually is, and then start adjusting that, start modifying it so that you can change. How do we change this? I'll be talking about that inshallah after Fajr series in Tazkiyah. Not maybe this week, probably next week, but we'll talk about this piece. How do you make values? How do you take a nice idea, a cute idea, forgive me, something cute, to an actual ethic? How do you, that is a huge transition. That's a big deal. We all like cute ideas. We all hear a story like, oh, isn't that a nice story? God bless him. That's awesome. Yeah, great. How do you make that a value for yourself? How does that become your ethic? How does that become you? How do you go from liking it to actually practicing it? There's a gap there. There's a gap that requires work. You have to put in some effort and work to fill that, to actually move this and put it over here. It's not simple. And in the Tazkiyah sessions I've been doing for a couple of years, I think we've talked about that a number of times, and I went over it. So tonight, inshallah, I'll share with you 3 sets of verses that talk about ethical consistency. And honestly, this is who the Prophet ﷺ was. You want to know Muhammad ﷺ, this is how you're going to know him. You're going to know him through this very simple 2-word phrase, ethical consistency. He never changed ﷺ. For better or for worse, never changed. When he was at his weakest, when he had the least, when he didn't have followers, and he didn't have wealth, he didn't have authority, he behaved in a certain way. And then later on, when he ruled the majority of Arabia, and he's the first person to do that historically. All of the kings in Arabia, they ruled a very small piece of it, just a very small piece. The Prophet ﷺ, by far, before he passed away, ﷺ, ruled the largest chunk of Arabia ever to be ruled by one man, ever. Like no one had reached that degree of land in a lifetime. Obviously, it was exceeded by Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman and Ali and Muawiyah, and later it was exceeded by all the Khulafa because the empire got bigger and bigger and bigger. But he passed away, ﷺ, ruling the largest chunk of land in Arabia ever to be ruled by one person. Same guy. You met him then, same guy. No difference. So you met him when he was 42, or you met him when he was 60, no difference. The same man, alayhi salatu wasalam. Same ethics, same way of speaking, same way, thought process, same way of treating people, the same set of values. You can change your mind on things. You can have different opinions. You're supposed to. Your opinions are supposed to grow with you. If you had the exact same set of opinions today than you had 10 years ago, I worry for you. I'm actually very worried for you. You've changed your mind on nothing. You learned nothing new. Not one thing to change your mind, not even once. Allahu Akbar. Unless you have divine knowledge, then you have a problem. You have not increased your knowledge in any way, because when you increase your knowledge, you will change your mind on certain things. You'll say, you know what? I don't think that's right anymore. But values and principles aren't like that. Honesty is not an opinion-based thing. It's an ethic. Either you have it or you don't. If you don't have it, then you should have it today. 10 years should allow you to do it, for example, if you didn't have it before. But that's not something I expect to change about you. Your ethics, I expect to stay consistent. But your opinions and your perspectives and your attitudes and your understandings of the world, that will grow because you're becoming wiser, because you're having more experiences. You're going to have some ideas like, yeah, I tried that. That doesn't work. No. I lived like that for a while. That was a bad choice. I shouldn't have spent those years doing that. That's good. That shows something. Ethics, on the other hand, are different. So that's why we have to differentiate between these two things. All right. That's what I wanted to share with you. So the first set of verses in Surah Yusuf that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about ethical consistency, we'll hear them in the first set of 4 rak'at tonight, inshallah. Enjoy them. And Surah Yusuf is a beautiful surah. I don't know when or how I'm going to fit this into a Ramadan program, to do a full review of the surah. Maybe one of the years the 30 episodes or the 30 sessions before Ramadan, we just go through Surah Yusuf. I don't know there'll be enough for it, but it's absolutely worth the time. So all of the surahs of the Quran are gem mines. They really are. Some of them we have the intellectual ability to just shovel out the gems to everyone. And some of them we don't have that yet. We are working on it. We're still trying to figure out, we're still trying to understand break the code of some of these teachings. They're not as clear to us. And others are just really easy. Surah Al-Kahf, for example, Surah Yusuf, these are easy. They're right in your face, it's right there. Just shovel them out. Learn all of the lessons. The lessons are simple for anyone. A child can listen to the Surah Yusuf and reflect a little bit and walk away with a couple of lessons that they wouldn't have had they not contemplated. So at some point it's worth doing that for this surah, absolutely. And it's just a beautiful thing to listen to, and it's a joy to learn from. In this part of the surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَرَاوَدَتْهُ الَّتِي هُوَ فِي بَيْتِهَا عَنْ نَفْسِهِ وَغَلَّقَتِ الْأَبْوَابَ وقالت هيت لك قال معاذ الله إنه ربي أحسن مثواي إنه لا يفلح الظالمون ولقد همت به وهم بها لولا أن رأى برهان ربه كذلك لنصرف عنه السوء والفحشاء إنه من عبادنا المخلصين. Yusuf alayhi salam had a rough beginning. He had a rough start. First couple of years were hunky-dory, were nice. He was living with his dad and his mom and his brothers. His dad adored him. He was learning stuff. He was growing. He was meeting milestones that most of his brothers couldn't meet. He just had a little bit of an edge to him, alayhi salam, in terms of who he was. But then, one event changed everything for him. Enough envy existed in the hearts of his siblings. Enough envy for the attention of their father. And that on its own is a series, wallahi. That's not even a lecture. That's a series of lectures, just talking about that one incident that happened. The fact that really what people envy you for is not what you've got. It's the attention of others. The most valuable thing that you have, allow me for this tangent on the side, allow me just for this. The most valuable thing you possess is your attention. That is the most valuable thing you have, is your attention. It is borderline sacred in terms of its importance. The attention that you have and you offer to others. Which is why the world today, every single company, what it's designed to do is to take it for free. They're designed to take your attention because that's the most valuable thing that you have. Anything, oh no, this app's free. Free? No, it's not free. It's the opposite of free. It's actually the most expensive one there is, because they are building their algorithm on your attention. They just want you to continue to look at them, to continue to listen to them, to offer them the most valuable thing that you possess, which is your attention. Kids know that. Kids are they have not been polluted by a lot of the complexities of this world. They're still pure, in their pure form. The nafs is in its pure form. What do they want? A 3-year-old, what does he want from me? He doesn't want my bank account. He doesn't want toys. He wants me. He wants me to look at him. Right? That's what a 3-year-old wants. Baba, look. Baba, look. That's all you hear. After all, like, Mashallah, Allah. Just fine, do it. Do it for the 50th time. Do it. Amazing. Mashallah. Amazing. Amazing. You jumped from this place to this place. Amazing. Can I go back to my work? But they can't help it. Because at the pure form, we know what's valuable. And what's valuable is the attention. And even right now, what's the most valuable thing? It's the attention of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The most valuable thing is the attention of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is what you're looking for. You want Him to look at you with the eye of His mercy. You want Him to look at you with His eye of compassion and love. This is what you want from Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. You don't want anything else. Once you get His attention, when you get the right form of His attention subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're good, you're golden, you are taken care of. So yes, even when it comes to our relationship with Allah, it's the attention that we crave. So the brothers of Yusuf, they were kids, they knew what mattered. What mattered was the attention of their father. And it built up enough envy that they tried to kill him. Yusuf alayhi salam. Understand this. The most valuable commodity that you possess is your attention. Don't give it out for free. Do not give it out for free. Don't offer your attention to anyone who's asking for it. Offer it to those who deserve it, those who are worthy of it. Wallahi, money doesn't matter. Wallahi, it's not that important. Money you can give, it doesn't matter. More money will come back later. It's money. It goes and comes and it loses value and increases in value, and you make a little bit at the beginning and then you lose some of it and you make more later. Wallahi, it's not the biggest, but your attention, this is what stays, this is what sticks. This is what will live on in the next generation of people. This is what's going to be valuable. So, that being said, Yusuf alayhi salam went through this horrible, rough start. He was enslaved. He went to a different country, different culture. He wasn't known. He's the son of, when the Prophet alayhi salam called Man al-Kareem, they said Man al-Kareem, and the Sahaba would give out names. But at the end, it was like a trivia question. And they would say, Al-Kareem is the person who does this. He said, yes, correct, not what I'm looking for. The Kareem is the person who does this. Correct, not what I'm looking for. And then he said, Al-Kareem, Ibn al-Kareem, Ibn al-Kareem, Ibn al-Kareem. قال يوسف ابن يعقوب ابن إسحاق ابن إبراهيم نبي ابن نبي ابن نبي ابن نبي. A prophet, son of a prophet, son of a prophet, son of a prophet, Yusuf alayhi salam. قال ولم تجتمع إلا ليوسف. No one in history has ever had this, where he is a prophet, his father is a prophet, his grandfather is a prophet, and his great-grandfather is a prophet. عليهم الصلاة والسلام أجمعين. So Yusuf alayhi salam has a certain degree of status. No one cares in Egypt. He's a 17, 18-year-old strapping young lad. Tall, good-looking, healthy, quite intelligent. Yeah? He's been through a bit. Life has chewed him up a little bit, so he has some experience under his belt. He's not one of those naive people who have no idea how to present themselves. He's been through stuff. He knows how to carry himself. And he's plucked into the house of Al-Aziz, of one of the heads of state in Egypt. Aziz Misr. In his house, there is a lady who's maybe a decade older than him, not that much older. He was young, so she was not that old. She was maybe 20-something, he was 17. Not that older. New wife to a man who is a couple of decades older than she is. She sees him, she fancies him. Now Yusuf alayhi salam, at that age, not only is he at the prime of his sexual needs and prowess, but he is living in a foreign land where no one knows him. So there's absolutely no risk of bad reputation because no one knows him. To add to that, he was enslaved. So no one cared. Slaves aren't held to an ethical standard. Like whatever slaves do, is who cares? No one cares. It didn't matter. And it was happening as the dream of most young men in the house he was living in. Because it was very convenient. He didn't have to get up and actually get dressed and go out the house and pursue it. It was in the house he was living in. And he was being pursued. He wasn't pursuing it. He was being pursued, which is even, a more complex fantasy for men. And to make it more, she was good looking. She was a pretty young lady. This is the recipe. There are people who would pay money for this. There are people who will blow their savings on a scenario of this type. Men today will blow all of their savings if you could just put them in a scenario and act this out. Just put them in a house. Let them be a slave. Let there be the lady of the house and pursue him. He'll put all of his money just to get that rush for a moment. People will pay for fahisha for something like this. Yusuf alayhi salam is offered all of these things. All of them. وَرَاوَدَتْهُ الَّتِي هُوَ فِي بَيْتِهَا. And the lady whom he is living in her house, she tried, murawada is to try and get someone to compromise. Give me something from yourself, something that is meaningful, that is you. And murawada is regarding something that is personal to you. It's not a possession or wealth. No, it's about an ethical standard. It's about your integrity. Give something up that is very, very personal to who you are in your essence. That's what murawada is. So she's asking for haram. She's asking for him to give up his purity, give up his chastity, his iffa, alayhi salam. Because to him, iffa is an ethic, it's a value. What are you willing to bet? What percentage of Muslims don't even know that iffa is an ethic? How much are you willing to bet that the majority percentage of Muslims today don't even know iffa is an ethic? If you say the word iffa, they don't even know what it means. You say the word chastity, they're not sure they've heard of it before. What are you willing to bet? I don't need to. I run surveys in classrooms with kids. And I've asked the question. And I've asked it for people who are older in university. And I know the percentage. I know that less than a third of our Muslim youth understand what the word means. Yes, they were told zina is haram, but they don't understand that iffa is an ethic, that chastity is an ethic, where you see purity to be valuable, where you see your sexuality to be something that is extremely important and significant and sacred. You don't offer it out for free. You cannot be, it's not for sale. It's not something that you use to make wealth through. And you're not looking for any opportunity to get rid of it or to engage or indulge in it. This is, again, when we talked about fawahish a few nights ago, a fundamental difference. A fundamental difference between us, between how we're supposed to be. Forgive me, us, that's a stretch. May Allah forgive me for saying these things, wallahi. How we're supposed to be and what the world here wants you to be, or what the world has normalized. It's a huge difference. Iffa is an ethic, chastity. So Yusuf alayhi salam was taught that at a young age. He left his home. He was thrown into a well at 6. He was disgruntled. Shouldn't he be? Shouldn't he be disgruntled? Shouldn't he hate the world? Shouldn't he hate everyone? If your blood betrays you, takes away everything from you, takes away your home, your stability, your parents, they took everything away from him. They stripped him from everything, alayhi salam. Shouldn't he be angry? Shouldn't he be disgruntled? Shouldn't he be, okay, I don't care about the world. I'm going to do whatever I want. Spend 20 years in drugs and sex and crime before he's like, oh, maybe I should, this wasn't a good idea. Astaghfirullah. Right? That's what you think was going to happen to a young boy. How is it that at the age of 6, Yusuf had enough ethical foundation that when he was 17, living as a slave in a foreign land, being asked for himself at the prime of his sexual prowess, he would say, Ma'adallah, Ma'adallah. I seek refuge in Allah. No way. No way. Innahu Rabbi ahsana mathwaya. My Lord has given me a good place to stay. I'm not going to betray that. I'm not a traitor. I wouldn't do that. Innahu la yuflihu adh-dhalimun. The oppressors who do something like this, they never do well in life. وَلَقَدْ هَمَّتْ بِهِ. And she made a move. She made a move. She didn't just ask, she made a move. لَهَمَّتْ بِهِ. وَهَمَّ بِهَا لَوْلَا أَن رَأَى بُرْهَانَ رَبِّهِ. And had it not been that he had seen clearly the evidence of his Lord, he would have made a move too. If you read the books of tafsir, there are these absolutely outrageous and bizarre explanations of what Burhan Rabbihi means. And sometimes I find like, how is it that the Mufassir even thought this was acceptable? Subhanallah. Everyone has there's always mistakes here and there. This has nothing, he wasn't offered anything alayhi salam at that moment in terms of miraculous revelation. Burhan Rabbihi was something that he had arrived at way before. Burhan Rabbihi was the evidence of his Lord. He had that already. He had seen the evidence of his Lord. He knew what was correct and what was wrong. He feared Allah more than he feared anything else. And because of that, he didn't make the move. One of the mistakes in recitation is to recite the surah ayah like this. وَلَقَدْ هَمَّتْ بِهِ وَهَمَّ بِهَا لولا أن رأى. No. You don't. You recite it. وَلَقَدْ هَمَّتْ بِهِ. And you stop. وَهَمَّ بِهَا لَوْلَا أَن رَأَى بُرْهَانَ رَبِّهِ. Because it's the appropriate way to recite that. She made the move. So وَهَمَّ بِهَا لَوْلَا أَن رَأَى بُرْهَانَ رَبِّهِ. He made a move. Was it not for the sake that he saw Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's evidence? Meaning he had that connection with Allah. What does that mean? Did he make the move or not? This cup was spilled had I not held it. Did it spill? No, it didn't spill. Right? When you say you're using that articulation, it spilled had I not held it. In Arabic, when you say انسكب لولا أن أمسكت بها, meaning it didn't spill had I not done something. So he didn't. ما هم بها. He didn't even make a move. He didn't even make the intention of doing something haram. عليه السلام, because he had clarity on who his Lord was. كذلك لنصرف عنه السوء والفحشاء. And that is how we send him away from sin and from fahsha, from fahisha. إنه من عبادنا المخلصين. He's amongst our servants who we have chosen to be sincere to us. If you don't believe this, if you're like, I don't know, Sheikh, the wording, turn the page. Turn the page and listen to the lady talk to her friends. Right? Listen to the lady talk to her friends. What did she say? Tell them. She said, وَلَقَدْ رَاوَدْتُهُ عَنْ نَفْسِهِ فَاسْتَعْصَمْ. And I asked him for fahisha. I tried to lure him. I tried to seduce him. Forgive me. I don't like using certain words, but that's what rawada means. I tried to seduce him. فَاسْتَعْصَمْ. And if you listen to the sin and the ain and the sad coming together, it's like the word, even if you don't understand what it means, it's tying a knot. فَاسْتَعْصَمْ. He sought refuge. He did not leave an opening. There was no weakness. I couldn't poke anywhere. Alayhi salatu wasalam, Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam. You want ethical consistency? There you go. And then when the ladies of the city started to ask for him, قال ربي السجن أحب إلي مما يدعونني إليه. Going to jail is more beloved to me than doing one of the stuff that they. وإلا تصرف عني كيدهن أصب إليهن. And if you don't help me and put me in a position where I'm going to make a mistake. This is too much. This is too much seduction. It's too much. He is saying, Ya Rab, put me in jail so I don't do this. People will go to jail for a year if they can get a night with a certain person. There are people who are willing, put me in jail for a year. I'll serve time if I can just get with fulana. A'udhu billah. I'm trying to draw for you a fundamental difference in mentality. A fundamental difference between how Muslims are supposed to think, how prophets think, what ethical consistency means, and what other stuff means. Yeah. Men have to be careful today. Boys have to be careful today. You're living in a very different time from the time of Yusuf alayhi salam. You have to be very careful. I have a lot to say on this topic that maybe is suitable for another night outside of Ramadan. But we are heading towards an absolute societal catastrophe as Muslims if we do not start pointing out some of the obvious deficits in how we are running. I don't understand how someone can be 27 and 28 and 29 and 30 and 35 and 40 living in this society and not be married. I don't get it. I really don't. I lived in a conservative part of the world back a while ago, and I barely made it to 25. And I was busy beyond what you can possibly imagine. I had all morning in medical school and all evening for Sharia school, and then all afternoons I was doing tadris. I had no time anyways. So when I see men and women going into their 30s without marriage, I have questions about this. How is this possible? What's happening in the background here? What's going on? There's something wrong here. This is not natural. And it's talking about an underlying problem that we are consciously choosing to draw a blind eye to and act like it doesn't matter, when it does. When people don't get access to intimacy appropriately, meaning either if you get access to too much intimacy, it causes perversion. If you don't get access to intimacy at all, it causes perversion. If you get access to intimacy in the wrong way, it causes perversion. It causes problems in how we understand our sexuality and the sexuality of others and what we find to actually be enjoyable. And this is very dangerous. This is very dangerous. People who end up with perverted understandings of their sexuality will harm others and harm themselves and cause harm within societies. and they won't know how to carry themselves appropriately, and we won't have healthy families, we won't have healthy units later on to produce Muslims. This is something that has to be addressed a little bit more directly and openly by the Muslim community, especially in the West. I don't know what it's like in the Middle East anymore. It's been 13 years. I don't know. I don't think it's doing too well, because when I was there, it wasn't going too well to begin with. So I'm pretty sure after a decade of war all across, people aren't happy. But here, I find there's a clear problem that can be identified and can be fixed if we just are willing to have that conversation. And the example of Yusuf alayhi salam kind of sparks a lot of that, because this is how a Muslim man is supposed to think. This is how a Muslim man is supposed to live. There you go. You want ethical consistency? Read his story. Wallahi, had this not been told to us by Allah, I would have not been able to believe it. I'll be honest with you. Had Allah not told the story, anyone who told the story, I would laugh. Say, no, that didn't happen. What are you talking about? A young single guy being seduced by the lady of the house that he has nothing to lose? Rajeh, Sheikh. May Allah not put us in a moment like that. Impossible. When you read this, you're like, all right, okay, then maybe the problem is with me. Maybe I wasn't taught properly. Maybe I don't have the right mentality for this. Maybe my ethics aren't as consistent as I think they are. The second verse within the second set of 4 rak'at that we're going to hear tonight is Yusuf alayhi salam's response. قَالَ لَا تَثْرِيبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الْيَوْمِ يَغْفِرُ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ وَهُوَ أَرْحَمُ الرَّاحِمِينَ. Imagine what they did to him. Imagine being carried at the age of 6 by your older brothers, the people who should be protecting you and loving you. And they carry you out to the woods, and they drop you into a well. Imagine sitting in a well, dark and cold and scared, calling upon your blood, your siblings, like your own brothers, it's not your friends, your siblings, please get me out. And they sit up there, they're laughing, and then you hear them one by one walk away. And they go away, and you think it's a prank, and they'll come back later. But they don't come back later. And then the night falls, and they don't come back at night either. And the next day comes, and they don't come back, and they leave you there to die and rot. And then to make things worse, you are pulled out, and you think it's them, but it's not them. It's a merchant who has no ethics at all, and he takes you. And he turns you, after being Al-Karim ibn Al-Karim, after being one of the sons of the prophets, after being someone, you are taken, you're turned to a slave. And you're removed from your land. You're not living in the same place anymore. That's not your language. It's not your culture. It's not what you're used to. You're moved to a different country. Then you're sold as a slave to serve in people's homes. And you spend years doing that. And then you're asked for haram. And you say, no, I don't want to do haram anymore. I'm not going to do it. So you're thrown in jail for 9 years. And then you confront your brothers, and your brothers don't even admit that they did the mistake. And they call you a liar behind your back. And they said you were always a rotten kid. That's why you didn't live. Imagine this, 40 years you don't get to see your father, Yaqub alayhi salam. 40 years, he didn't see his mom and dad for 40 years. Think of this. Think of last seeing them when you were 6. You can barely remember their faces. And the next time you see them, you're 46 years old. How could you possibly forgive someone for doing that to you? How could you not make your life a Marvel movie of revenge? Huh? Something that DC Comics would have taken and made a full series on how this person is going to seek revenge on these people, killing them one by one, being artistic about it, creative how he's going to do it for what they did to him. No. See, that's the point, is that no, that's not what he did at all. At all. He actually went out of his way to try and get them to see their mistake, so they would apologize, so he could forgive them. He could have confronted them earlier in the story. Listen to the story. He could have confronted them the day they came in, and he could have put them in jail, and he could have punished them. But he went out of his way and kept it a secret and tried to maneuver. Why? He wanted them to see their mistake. He wanted them to feel ashamed of what they did, so they would come clean to their father. So they would come clean to him later and apologize. Because if they apologized, he knew, because his ethics were of compassion. His ethics were of forgiveness. That was an ethic he carried. He would always forgive. All he required is for the person to apologize. That's all he needed, is just admit that you were wrong, and I will forgive you immediately, but do it. He was afraid that if they didn't admit, he wouldn't forgive them, and then his family would be torn. Then his father would hate his siblings, and his siblings would be imprisoned, and his family would be ruined. He doesn't want to ruin his family. He wants people to come together. Alayhi salatu wasalam. So all he needs is for them to admit their mistake. I can't fathom what he does here. I'll be honest, I can imagine the first one to a certain degree. You can imagine it. You can see, okay, maybe in the right moment, right? You can do it. I can't imagine this one. This to me is way more difficult. They stole his life from him. They stole his life. They took away everything that meant something to him. Alayhi salatu wasalam, as a child. You don't do that to a child. How could you do that to a child? And if you did it, how could you not later on come clean? They kept this secret for 40 years. They could have come clean like a year later or something and say, "Wallah, Baba, ma akalahu dhi'b." It wasn't. There was no wolf. We threw him in a. But no, they didn't. A decade later, 2 decades later, ya akhi, come clean. Nope. They're taking this with them to the grave. That tells me there's very little remorse. Very little remorse, right? Almost no remorse at all. He still was willing to make this right by his dad, because he doesn't want his father to have to suffer from a torn family. He didn't want that for his dad, alayhi salam. He knew his dad was alive. I don't want my father to suffer this. I want my family to come together. So he made sure that they learned the lesson. They were weak and humbled, and they came to him and they told him, Tallahi, laqad atharaka Allahu alayna. By Allah, indeed, Allah chose you over us. You had an advantage. We were envious and jealous, but Allah chose you. He gave you something He didn't give us. وَإِن كُنَّا لَخَاطِئِينَ. And indeed, we were at fault for doing that. Without missing a beat, alayhi salam. There's no verse between this one and this one. Without missing a beat. لَا تَثْرِيبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الْيَوْمِ. No hard feelings today. يَغْفِرُ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ. Allah will forgive you. وَهُوَ أَرْحَمُ الرَّاحِمِينَ. I don't have time. خلاص. طيب. The Prophet ﷺ would do this in his life. When Abu Sufyan came to Abbas and told him, I don't know, how do I fix this problem? Abbas is like, I don't know how to fix your problem. You betrayed him and lied to his face. I don't know, let's try. So they're both very concerned about the Prophet ﷺ, beheading Abu Sufyan for what he did. They run into Ali and they ask him, Ali's like, Abu Sufyan, what are you doing here? Are you insane? How do you come here? How do you dare come here? And Abu Sufyan says, I want to fix this somehow. So Ali thinks, and Ali radiallahu anhu alayhi salam, he knows the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam best. He's like, I know what to do. Go and say this. Say, Tallahi laqad, say it, memorize it. Tallahi laqad atharaka Allahu alayna wa in kunna lakhatiin. Say it again and again, memorize it. Say those exact words. If you say those exact words, he will say this exact sentence. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, because he looks for the opportunity to practice the Quran alayhi salatu wasalam. He is waiting. When is the opportunity going to come? When am I going to be put in a situation where someone's going to come begging for forgiveness and I can immediately say to him what Yusuf said to him? He looks for those opportunities. So Abu Sufyan, listen to me. Don't say anything else. Say exactly the way it does. So he memorized it. He comes up to the Prophet alayhi salam. The Prophet alayhi salam sees him from afar. Ya Abu Sufyan, ataytani al-Madinah takdhibu alayhi, taqulu li la qadr. You came to Medina from afar. He starts yelling at him. Lying to me, telling me you didn't break the covenant, that you did not betray me, that you did not. How dare you come to Medina and lie to my face in the masjid when I gave you aman? The Prophet ﷺ, so Abu Sufyan, no word. He comes close enough. Tallahi laqad atharaka Allahu alayna wa in kunna lakhatiin. He doesn't miss a beat alayhi salatu wasalam. لا تثريب عليكم واليوم يغفر الله لكم وهو أرحم الراحمين. صلى الله عليه وسلم. That's what it means to learn the Quran. That's what it means, is so that you listen to the ayah, you listen to the lesson, and you wait in your life. When am I going to be given the opportunity to practice this? And you practice it immediately when you got offered the opportunity. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And that's the fiqh of Sayyidina Ali, karramallahu wajhah, knowing. The last set of verses is very, very long, so I can't get through it. I have a minute. But listen, read them today. Listen to the muqra in the last 4 verses, rak'at, reading these. أَفَمَنْ يَعْلَمُ أَنَّ مَا أُنزِلَ إِلَيْكَ مِنْ رَبِّكَ الْحَقُّ كَمَنْ هُوَ أَعْمَى. Is the person who knows what Allah has revealed to you is the truth, similar to someone who is blind from that truth. إِنَّمَا يَتَذَكَّرُ أُولُو الْأَلْبَابِ. Only those who have intellect will remember these things. And then he starts to describe subhanahu wa ta'ala. The first description, الَّذِينَ يُوفُونَ بِعَهْدِ اللَّهِ وَلَا يَنْقُضُونَ الْمِيثَاقِ. The people who see through their covenants and they never ever betray their word. Those who see through their covenants, they'll never, if they give their word is golden. They will always stick by their word because their ethics are consistent. Whether it's convenient for them to see through their word or not, they will see it through. Whether it's convenient for them to hold on to the covenant or it's not, they will hold on to the covenant. And that what it's mean. That's why it's a covenant. That's why it's ahd. It's ahd. We have a ahd with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. La ilaha illallah. We have a ahd with the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. Muhammadur Rasulullah. These are uhud. This is a covenant. You offered your word. You gave your word. You said La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. You gave your word that you will live your life according to what's in that book. And you will follow his footsteps alayhi salatu wasalam till your last breath. You gave your word. Be good on your word. Make sure your word means something. Don't give your word today and then turn back tomorrow and then come back. No, stick to it. Because that's the value of having an ethic. This is what we're required to do. We're required to do this. I'm sorry, I've run out of time. Subhanallah, bihamdik, shanu la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa barak ala nabiyyina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Jazakumullah khair, barakallah.